Since I started learning how to draw around a year and a half ago, I've drawn a lot of characters. But looking back at my artworks, my viewers noticed something before I did. No matter the character, the pose, or the composition, every single one of them is a girl. At first, I thought it was just a preference. I was drawing the characters I was most interested in, but over my 17 months of drawing, I realized I had only fully rendered one male character. And he looks so much like a girl that I get a comment like this every day. That's when I realized I was so terrible at drawing men that people thought this drawing was a girl. And honestly, I just stopped trying to draw them because I was afraid to butcher a guy again. But I can't keep running away from my weaknesses if I actually want to grow as an artist. So after 17 months of drawing exclusively anime girls, it's time I finally draw a man. In order to gauge where my skill level on men is currently at, I decided to do something new. I gave myself 30 minutes to try and draw a man from my imagination. I wanted to test and see what my characters will look like when I have no safety nets. And the result couldn't have gone any more wrong. It was a really strange feeling to draw without a reference. And while drawing, my mind was completely blank. I've probably drew over 1,000 heads now, so constructing a head with or without a reference was second nature to me. But then I got to where the hair was supposed to go. I had absolutely no idea what hairstyle to give him. So I made a bold decision. He's gonna be bald. 30 minutes later, here's the result I came up with. It's not completely terrible, but it's also clearly not what I was going for. His shoulders are narrow and the anatomy just feels wrong. I knew something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what. Even though I know the differences between male and female anatomy, knowing and drawing it are two completely different beasts. My hands keep gravitating towards what they knew. Curves, softer edges, and feminine proportions. And my result obviously showed that I have a lot to learn. Since having knowledge doesn't automatically equal having the ability to draw, you actually have to put in the time to make your hands listen. And the frustrating part is, I already had the knowledge, I just couldn't make my hands use it. So I went back to the basics just to get more familiar with the anatomical difference between a guy and a girl. Immediately, I realized I should have just done this from the beginning. Once I drew both and had a direct visual comparison, I discovered the differences were way more drastic than I expected. For instance, a guy has broader shoulders and narrower hips. On paper, I knew all of this. But when I actually see it drawn right next to each other, it made something click in a way just knowing about it never did. My hands finally started to catch up with what my mind was thinking. And looking back at my first drawing, I could instantly see exactly what went wrong. The way I draw characters, I'm used to drawing curvy lines. So when I tried drawing a guy, I used the same strategy I've always used, even though it should have been with sharper edges instead. For head studies, I was already familiar with a guy's head from my days studying the Loomis head. I drew plenty of male faces, but I just never applied any of these techniques to my preferred anime style art. So I was looking at a couple of these studies and also drew a few new ones to refresh my memory. And that's when the jaw and thickness of a man's face really hit me. I remember drawing these sharp edges and also read about these before. Everyone says to draw men's neck thicker, but since I only draw women, it was just a rule I know but never really applied. Seeing myself draw these out in front of me, it was a mind opener. The jaw is wider and sharper at the angles, the neck is also really thick compared to what I was used to drawing. But even with all these studies, something still felt incomplete. Looking at my studies, I had the face down, I had the proportions, but every time I tried to put it all together, the body still felt off. And that's when I realized a crucial element I have been missing the entire time. Muscles has always been the one thing that I've wanted to draw for the longest time, but never gotten the chance to. Because throughout my drawing journey, I just never really had a reason to actually go in depth to study them. So honestly, this is essentially how far I could manage on my own. But by taking this how to draw stylized poses and anatomy class, I was able to follow a detailed class that guided me through to finally fill in that missing piece that makes drawing men feel complete. One specific technique I learned in the class was drawing an arm with the shape of a lightning bolt. Usually when I draw an arm, I like to use cylinders, but since a human arm is not completely upright and aligned, this technique helped me visualize the arm easily. It made it way more simple to draw. And with Skillshare's help, I was able to draw muscles for the first time and created this masterpiece. If you want to explore classes like this one yourself, Skillshare is an online learning platform with thousands of creative classes taught by real people, with classes designed for the joy of learning something new. It is the best place to sharpen the skills you use every day or learn a creative skill. If you're looking to reconnect with your creativity, Skillshare is where humans come to learn from other humans. If you are interested and want to give this a try yourself, make sure to take advantage of my unique link in the description, the pinned comment, or scan the QR code on the screen. Because the first 500 people that use my link will get a month of Skillshare for free. Get started today! So after drawing a bunch of figures and realism of dudes, it was finally time to take the knowledge I've gained and move on to the style I really wanted to draw. But even with the fundamentals down, I wasn't going to be able to automatically take these basic forms and translate them into something that looks appealing. And in order for this to happen, I wanted to first study how other artists approach their drawings. The first study is from Cam. For this study, I want to try and replicate the face as close to the original as possible. However, as soon as I started sketching the head, I knew this was going to be a big challenge. Even in anime style art, there was so many subtle differences I had to pay attention to if I wanted the face to actually look masculine. The eyes were much smaller, the jaw was sharper, and every feature felt just a bit more angular than what I was used to drawing. But the most painful part about drawing men is probably the hair. For some reason, my hair sketch felt like I just gave him a haircut with a chainsaw, and the head overall took me an hour to finish. Since I specifically picked this piece for the face, I kinda sped through the body, so the sketch ended up like this. At this point, things weren't looking very promising for me. But once I moved on to the line art, I realized I was forgetting one detail that completely changed how the face looked. You see, while trying to study an artist's style, you don't want to just copy whatever you're seeing. You have to try and understand the artist's intent behind their work. So when I did my line art, something clicked. I stopped trying to match every single line and started actually thinking about what I was drawing. I already spent weeks studying men, and once I trusted I have the knowledge instead of blindly copying what I saw in front of me, the face started coming together. And overall, I was happy with how the study turned out. While studying Cam's art, I was reminded of why I do style studies in the first place, to understand why they made the decisions they did and not just copy the artist's brushstrokes. Putting these two works side by side, I realized I didn't fully capture the expression and mood for the piece, but for one of my first attempts at drawing the male character, I gained a bit of confidence. However, one study definitely wasn't enough, so in order to test my brain further, I also did a second study, this time from Suzuki. Since I focused more on the face for Cam's study, I decided I was going to pay more attention to the body this time. The reason I chose this particular piece was to force myself to draw the underlying forms. But while drawing the body, I noticed myself constantly defaulting to curves. Mid-drawing, I would subconsciously curve my lines, which is perfect if I was drawing women, but it was completely softening the masculine structure I was going for. While observing this piece to see how Suzuki kept the forms sharp, I noticed a really clever shading trick. At this angle, the artist cast a dark triangle right under the jawline onto the neck. I actually never seen this before, but it made me realize drawing men isn't just about drawing sharper lines. Your rendering and the way you block out your shadows can also do the heavy lifting. Anyways, my study came out like this. I didn't draw as close because I kinda got carried away drawing the features of the chest, but it was definitely a challenge on its own. After these two style studies, something had genuinely shifted. I finally felt like I understood how to make the masculine features look intentional in anime style. And it was one drawing that had been waiting for me since last year, and it's time to fix what I had left behind. This art of my first male drawing honestly crushed the confidence I had going on, and it was a big reason why I never drew another man after this. Looking at it now, I can see exactly why he ended up this way. When I started sketching my foundation, I noticed something different. Since I know the difference between a man and a woman, I was able to properly place the forms and features of the male body down quite easily, which was something I wasn't able to do 10 months ago. Technically, I could have just drawn clothes straight over the body sketch and call it a day like last time, but I didn't. This time, I spent a little time and actually detailed the muscles and forms of the upper body before putting the clothes on top. The sketching process was going great until I got to the face. During my face sketch, I was trying really hard to keep in mind of the male features, but no matter how much I adjusted the structure of the face, the more uncanny he started to look. The face still looks a bit childish, and it definitely wasn't what I had in mind. Eventually, I took inspiration from Cam's study and adjusted the angle of the face slightly, and at the same time, fixed the hair. After this adjustment, the face finally looked like what I had in mind. For rendering, I kept it simple. I added basic shadows and gave my art simple lighting. I didn't want to overcomplicate the piece, and honestly, even with simple shading, I was really impressed with how it turned out in the end. So I spent 17 months drawing anime girls. I've studied anatomy, done the style studies, and even overcame one of my nightmares. And all of this leads up to one final challenge. A challenge that I've never done before. To limit test what I've learned, I decided to end this journey by turning one of my favorite pieces that I've drawn and turned Kana, a character I've drawn a dozen times, into a man. But that familiarity was exactly what made this challenge dangerous. My muscle memory knew exactly how to draw her with soft lines and large expressive eyes, and to turn Kana into a guy, I couldn't just give her shorter hair and call it a day. I had to completely tear everything down. Starting with the sketch, the first thing that hit me was the pose. Posing men is way harder than I expected. I want a guy to look cool, and getting that balance right was the first step to what makes men appealing. I settled with this initial pose, using this image as a starter reference. To make the character look masculine, I shrink the eyes, brought the brow line down, and widened the jaw to give him a sharper look. I didn't really like the way my eyes looked, and after I gave him a couple of adjustments, the sketch came out like this. Things were moving along nicely until I faced the toughest part of this challenge, the clothes. I can't just give guy Kana the same clothes as girl Kana, so I had to browse for ideas and finally made my own stage-inspired outfit. After the line art, coloring and rendering was the easy part, and putting everything together, he came out like this. I don't think I realized how much I needed to do this challenge, not just for the video, but also for my art journey. There's a certain kind of stagnation that creeps in when you stayed in your comfort zone too long. I was improving, but improving at the same things. Studying and drawing men for a month forced me to observe art differently, and putting my male Kana next to the original. The difference is quite stark. Not just between male and female, but also between who I was as an artist at the start of this month and who I am now. At the beginning of this challenge, I thought I knew the differences between men and women. I was honestly taking this a little lightly. After sitting down to draw a man from imagination, I realized I had no idea what I was doing. That bald man was the wake-up call, and so were the hundreds of comments asking me to draw men. I spent 17 months drawing anime girls. Turns out, the best thing I could do for my art was finally step outside of it.